What I relate is the history of the next 2 centuries. I describe what is coming, what can no longer come differently, the advent of nihilism. Nihilism is the conviction that there is no meaning to life. It is a judgment of our world as one that lacks gods and higher purpose to justify our suffering. To be a nihilist is to hold a position antithetical to life and mirror the sentiment that life is not worth living. Nietzsche tried to warn the world of the advent of nihilism and described world's views based on true world philosophy as pessimistic evaluations of life that served as precursors to modern nihilism. But what is a true world? Julian Jung described the true world as a destination, such that to reach is to enter a state of eternal bliss, a heaven, paradise, or utopia. True world philosophies give meaning to life by representing it as a journey, yet Nietzsche describes that as a pessimistic lens to view the world through. Much like Plato's cave allegory or the Christian view of heaven and earth, true world philosophies work on the principle that there is something inherently broken and wrong about the observable experience that we live through. The concept, the true world, insinuates that this world is untruthful, deceptive, dishonest, inauthentic, inessential, and consequently also not a world adapted to our needs. It is well known that Nietzsche heralded the death of God, by which he meant that the belief in a monotheistic God in the West was in decline. However, Nietzsche predicted that true world theories would continue to flourish. By using an atheistic madman in his writing to proclaim that God was dead, Nietzsche made the apt comparison between modernism of the time and Christian true world philosophy. The prescription they offered was, of course, redemption in life, rather than structuring themselves around an afterlife. However, the same pessimistic outlook of the world remained a key part of their ideology. Examples of this are the Nazi ideology, which promised the coming of an Aryan utopia, or Karl Marx's stated arrival of a communist utopia, which would mark what he called the end of history. God is dead, but given the way of men, there may still be caves for thousands of years in which his shadow will be shown. So why view chapter 15 and the masses' travels through Nietzsche? The Originium project, at least Priestess's variation of it, is inherently the same nihilistic worldview that Nietzsche warns us against. It stands in opposition to life, and the main cast's defiance against it fits nicely with the themes of hope that broadly define the world of Arknights. Priestess, much like the scholars and theology that Nietzsche criticizes, prescribes a pessimistic and ultimately lethal worldview that promotes the death of spirit and individual purpose. In the beginning of chapter 15, we see Hierda's salvation from death at the hands of Priestess as a mirror of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. The spark of life given to Adam is represented by Priestess reaching out to the young Cordus on death's door, much as God reached out to Adam. Of course, Priestess denies being a god, however, she is the closest thing to a deity that we have on Terra. We see this through godlike imagery that defines both her actions and appearance. We see this in Babel, where she stands in opposition to the unification that Teresa proposed. And we see this in chapter 15, where she not only controls Originium to change the weather like a higher being, but also sells her salvation as the only solution to the only truth of this world, the death of things. In the context of Nietzsche, the assimilated universe represents a true world. Those within, such as Priestess or the Presence, offer Hierda pessimistic truths that shatter her worldview and make her question the reasons for the suffering of the infected on Terra. The Presence speaks of great empires across space and time, ultimately forgotten and reduced to nothing. It boldly states that, from start to finish, we are nothing. This is the first thing you must learn before you can understand it. The idea of paradise is likewise shot down by the Presence, who affirms that their people once chased after meaningless principles and ideals that ultimately held no value. Priestess too flirts with despair, stating history as objective truth. At first, we flaunted what little vestige of truth we managed to grasp, and attempted to converse with the gods. We were answered with silence. The only truth is described as a lack of it, barring one unchanging fact of the universe that Priestess uses as a driving force to justify Originium. Death is the inevitable end of all the creations of nature. All we can do is to leave behind the truth before our doom. And yet, faced with this truth, both Priestess and the Law offer a solution no different to the trap that Nietzsche warns us against. If at least symbolically Originium and the assimilated universe represent heaven or a sort of salvation, then her nihilistic view of the world rejects the existence of purpose and value to be found in living on Terra. Yet, considering that she is someone who views life on Terra as nothing more than an accident, and considers their sacrifice meaningless in the grand scheme of her goals, it is not surprising that this is the worldview she subscribes to. In the eyes of the Priestess, Originium is a true world that will save Terra from the Observers, much the same way that the Law opts to save the Sancta through a future within Originium. Both worldviews choose to abandon the present, something that can be observed through Exucia's debate with the First Saint. These destinations reject our existence as something worth living and fighting for. We see as much with the Saint pushing to abandon Laterano and the lives we live in favor of a destination beyond that. A destination that robs us of who we are as individuals. Much the same, Priestess's assimilated universe is likened to a static tomb, where time does not truly flow. A snapshot of repeating past that may have averted death, yet doomed the path of life into a nihilistic grave. This imagery is further bolstered by Hieda's eventual return to Terra, wherein she acts as a prophet for the vision of Priestess. She cures those in pain and searches to speak with her once more. Her views, once religious, shift to worshipping Originium as the new salvation for the infected on Terra, rejecting pious belief for a scientific solution that is ultimately no different from the faith she once held. Religion and science are therefore viewed as one and the same in this context. Much how Nietzsche criticized contemporary worldviews, Priestess too speaks of them in the same light. Much as her actions mirror the faith she dogmatically distances herself from. When speaking of the Observers, who are described as a white light that brings a peaceful end to all things, Priestess speaks of pious souls, scholars, scientists, and idealists, all in the same vein. This is purposeful on behalf of the writing team, even if Priestess herself is unaware of this. All of these groups of people choose to tackle the dilemma that plagues our universe in the same ways, a road that leads them to fall into the pessimistic pitfalls of nihilism. It should be noted that Nietzsche did not oppose faith as a personal belief, and neither does the world of Arknights. H. L. Mencken stated, Nietzsche had no interest whatever in the delusion of the plain people, that is, intrinsically. What he stood against was not their beliefs, but the elevation of those beliefs by any sort of democratic process to the dignity of a state philosophy. That is to say, Nietzsche believed that true world philosophy on a state level was harmful for humanity overall, both because it stumped the development of people towards higher goals and because it forced the weak into a constant state of misery. The Masses Travels explores the nature of faith by criticizing the way in which it is implemented into systems, rather than attributing an inherent goodness or wrongness against personal belief. Faith, and by extension purpose, is a subjective personal journey unique to everyone. Laterano, being the holy city of the Sancta and the symbol of their faith, serves to explore these beliefs by contrasting the differing views of the Sancta of today versus what Laterano once represented. For Lemoine, Laterano is likened to the love she feels for her friends and family, as well as her desire to protect those bonds. For Exucii, Laterano is the society of the Sancta as a whole, the freedom of expression and individuality that comes with their culture, as well as the joys of respectful coexistence. For Gracebearer and her procession, faith serves as a guiding light to keep the fallen Sancta and those accompanying them strong. Although their journey takes them to Laterano, it is clear from their interactions that they never expected to be accepted into the city with open arms. Therefore, their Laterano is the journey itself, formed from a collective wish that manifested unity and support towards one another. Consequently, the Laterano of individuals differs from the Laterano of the Law. The Saint tells Exucii of the Tikaz and their original encounter with their god, their holy city shaped by a wish for survival amidst foreign invaders and barren lands. To the Saint, her faith represents the primal desire for the continuation of her species, which in turn shaped the Laterano of the past. Yet, just as religion in the Western world, the reasons for the existence of faith have evolved past simple survival as the guiding purpose. The Laterano of the past vaguely reflects what the city has become over thousands of years. Nowhere is this clearer than in the song Somniomancer. The soundtracks of those related to Laterano, up to this point at least, have remained a consistent mix of holy undertones within energetic and expressive dubstep, representative of the personality and freedom that comes with being a Sancta. However, the boss music of MT10 bears zero resemblance to this version of the Holy City. It is woeful, it lacks individuality, and represents the cries of thousands of voices in a song far closer to a classical religious piece. Therefore, the Laterano presented here stands diametrically opposed to how faith has evolved for the Sancta. Laterano, once viewed as paradise, is already in the process of dismantling its fascist theocratic past by the beginning of the Masses Travels. This utopia, forged by the rejection of outsiders and the exiling of the infected, hardly amounts to the kind of place that truly elevates people. Much like ideologies that Nietzsche warns us against, it once sold salvation by discarding the unsavory parts of terror rather than fixing them, thus forsaking others as a price for a false heaven. This Laterano, no doubt a consequence of the saint's wish for survival, eventually changes alongside human enlightenment and finally opens its arms to the world. Faith for the sancta, broadly defined as purpose, has evolved past prejudiced survival. Likewise, the law, once a central beacon of authority, is deemed to be nothing more than a tool for order by none other than Federico, a man with muted empathy that is guided largely by logic. Accordingly, God, faith, and religion are said to exist as forces for the prosperity of the sancta, though not as a philosophy of objective truth. For that reason, the Pope can confidently state that God is dead. The comment runs deeper than the literal murder of their machine god. It's a proclamation that the belief in the law as the sole foundation to morality and meaning has become obsolete in modern Laterano. Without those values, it is ultimately up to the sancta to find purpose and meaning in their lives, or risk falling into nihilism and aimless despair. Nietzsche's solution to nihilism lies in the pursuit of power, the type that we embody and express from within ourselves rather than Machiavellian control over others. An athlete who becomes stronger counts as increasing their power, the same way a rider who improves her riding or a teacher enhancing her capacity to educate does. Power is more life, not by its mere continuation, not by its multiplication, but by life's being raised to a higher level of capacity and control. Power is transition to a higher level, a self-overcoming. The point to my life is my growth or strengthening, and this lies not merely in expanding but in ascending, which involves overcoming previous states of myself. To Nietzsche, simply living wasn't enough. The pursuit of power was about overcoming your own suffering, focusing on the self rather than any grander purpose of humanity within the universe. Embedded in Nietzsche's writing was a guide to setting goals that would help you attain this power. The goal must be meaningful and challenging. It must promote our health and well-being, or the well-being of others. It must be conducive to the attainment of personal excellence, and it must be self-chosen, or in other words, an expression of our individuality. With a goal decided, attaining power is the next step. It requires persistence and dedication, a personal journey riddled with obstacles. Self-doubt, fear, anxiety, and laziness are sure to plague us. Likewise, doubt and criticism from others, or even personal challenges such as our health and lack of time, will impede our progress. But as far as Nietzsche is concerned, the things that stand between us and our goal present an opportunity. When we confront a resistance, we stretch the limits of our mind and body in an attempt to overcome it. That increase in strength is power. Much as solving a tricky puzzle will make our skills grow, obstacles function as catalysts to propel us to enhance our capacities. In contrast to this stand both Priestess and The Law, whose goals are in opposition to the guidelines that Nietzsche prescribes. The aim of the law is to turn humanity into angels within Originium, a meaningless conceptual existence described as being devoid of happiness and suffering, devoid of experiences that grant us goals to overcome and higher aspirations to grow towards. The law states that the beauty and ugliness of the world is meaningless to such beings, to which Anderwain questions whether angels can even be considered life. It is here that his old faith, formed by a vision of the Laterano of old, crumbles and the rejection of pessimism begins. Anderwain has found a new purpose, not in the search of an eternal afterlife, but in the inherent human will to overcome suffering. Both angels and the assimilated universe as destinations abandon the parts of humanity that make up individuals. Anderwain wishes to save everyone by elevating them rather than transitioning into a meaningless existence that is antithetical to life. Anderwain's faith in this faux paradise initially blinds him, and it is only after he opens his eyes that he realizes the true solution. When all obstacles are removed and all individuality is lost, our purpose and happiness as people expires. Yet, by partaking in the journey of life and overcoming those resistances, we are fulfilled and raised above our previous states. If God wishes me to embrace death as an angel, then I would rather be born as a human, with all the ugliness, transience, and suffering that entails. I'm not only conceited, I'm an egotist, a villain, a traitor, and a fanatic. And so I suffer and grieve, my frustrations giving rise to strife. But they are the foundation of my life. If I were to abandon them, the one who obtains relief, who becomes an angel, would not be me. Let suffering scar his flesh, let strife snap his bones. Then, and only then, will we have the clarity of mind to walk his path. Unlike the Laterano of old, unlike Originium and The Law, Anduin does not reject what makes us human, nor does he undermine those experiences. He embraces each and every flaw as something to be overcome, rather than washed away and ignored. Life is a journey full of bumps in the road, but to take that away is to take away life itself. And so, no longer blinded by the misery of a nihilistic destination, Anduin looks towards a hopeful future on Terra, forged by the will of the people. To suffer is to live. To overcome that suffering and elevate beyond your limitations is to find purpose. Fear not falling into hell. This is the first lesson you should learn. Patrician, initially labelled a coward by Paganini for falling into the clutches of true world philosophy, for giving up on people, eventually realizes that there is no miracle that can treat every problem and fix every flaw that defines us. To abandon those paths is to abandon who we are, but that is no solution at all. To walk through hell is to conquer and overcome those flaws rather than run away from them. Exusiae too, in her conversation with the first saint, rejects a salvation that abandons her Laterano. For Exu, prayer is a motivational tool for attaining power, rather than a miracle that can remove the obstacles in our lives. Prayer is likened to a goal, one that brings people together through empathy beyond that of the Sancta. Prayer is hope in the hearts of the people willing to help one another, pushing them to improve their own lives. It is for this reason that she rejects the saint's salvation, believing that it is the residents of the Holy City that will build towards a better future, rather than falling into despair. Arknights is a game about hope. In a world on the brink of destruction, where Euripides threatens to ruin the lives of everyone it afflicts, where wars between nations occur and ordinary people are driven to the darkest pits of misery and suffering, it is easy to fall into despair. But the game doesn't encourage that. Ultimately, it is the lack of purpose that drives people towards nihilism. It may be true that there is no paradise or greater meaning to life, but such knowledge should not be the driving force of your life. To live is to suffer, yet to overcome these obstacles is what makes life worth living. Each and every person should strive to raise their own lives and the lives of others through a journey more important than the destination itself. Just as Calcit found hope in Rose Island, just as Casdell no longer requires a prophesized king to lead them into the future, we too should seek out meaningful goals, unreliant on promises of utopia that seek to destroy our purpose. We should strive towards a brighter future, piece by piece, and become a little stronger with each step that we take. Thank you to those that stuck around until the end. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'm very sorry for disappearing for 6 months. Life got a little bit hectic and I ran out of time to do the videos I wanted to make. Fortunately, with the release of Chapter 15 and the Master's Travels, I had a burst of inspiration that let me put some time aside to actually work on a video. I'd also like to offer special thanks to my friend and global warming guy for giving me feedback and editing my video for me. The link to their channel will be in the description. Last of all, these videos take a long time and effort to create, so if you enjoyed it, please make sure to share it with your friends or leave a like and comment to help the algorithm. I also recently opened a Buy Me a Coffee page, as I'm still not monetized on YouTube, so if you're willing to support me there, any donation is greatly appreciated and will help me in creating new content in the future. The link will be in the description of this video.